Welcome back, Sebastian here. Time for my power rankings after the 2023 London ePrix. Of course, since the London ePrix was the final race of the seasons, these will be my final power rankings of season 9. So I'll also take the opportunity just to talk a little bit about each driver and how I thought they finished the year. So starting in number 22, we have a driver whose teammate actually won the championship, and that is Andre Lauderer. So really disappointing end to the season. 2 non-points finishes for Lauderer, who of course his teammate was on the podium both races in London, and of course wrapped up the Formula E title the first race in London. Number 21, Roberto Merhi. So for Merhi, a bit of an anonymous and disappointing end to the season. Was beaten in both races by Lucas di Grassi, who had a pretty good race that first race, getting a good haul point for the Mahindra team. And for Merhi, his Formula E debut, his kind of half-season debut, has been quite anonymous and quite underwhelming, especially in qualifying. Number 20, René Rast. So for Rast, a bit of a tricky end to the season. Took out Verline in the first race in London at that turn 1 incident, and didn't really have a great race 2 either. So for Rast, I think a pretty tricky end to the season after a really positive start, getting that podium in Delia, of course. So 20th place for René Rast, who stays in the same position as last race. Number 19, dropping down 2 positions, is a driver who had one of the biggest crashes that we've seen this year, and that is Sacha Fenestras. Of course, basically went over the back of the Neo and crashed heavily at the hairpin. Of course, for Fenestras, his teammate had a very good race weekend. I believe finished 4th or 5th on the road. The first race was given a penalty, but then the second race finished in a very strong 4th place. So very, very different fortunes compared to his teammate for Fenestras, so I moved him down 2 positions to 19th. Number 18, driver who had a bit of a tricky weekend, and that is Sergio Sette Camara. So for Camara, really strong points finish in the first race, but was then disqualified. I'm not really sure the exact details of why he was disqualified. And then in the second race, was kind of out of the points the whole race and never really looked to have points on the cards. And for Sette Camara, I think really the thing that's been his undoing compared to his teammate, at least I think in terms of performance, has been qualifying. He's been out-qualified very heavily compared to his teammate Dan Ticktum, and I think that really holds him back in the races because the Neo is not the most efficient car. Number 17, moving up a couple positions, is Jake Hughes. Manages to grab a couple of points, a point for fastest lap as well as a point for 10th place in that first race in London. Second race, not a whole lot happened that race, so it's really hard to say. But for Hughes, decent haul points, was better than Rast, I thought, this past weekend, so he moves up a couple of positions. Number 16, staying in the same position, is Sam Bird. So for Bird, even though he had a couple good points finishes, 4th I believe and 7th, was still quite far off his teammate Mitch Evans, so I've kept him in 16th. Number 15, dropping down 7 positions, is Robin Frijns. So for Frijns, a bit of a tricky weekend, was beaten in both races by his teammate Nico Müller, who of course somehow got a double points finish in the Abt, and I believe he was also out-qualified by Müller in both races as well. On top of that, to make matters worse for Frijns, he kind of had that moment where he lost a car in the opening laps of the first race, and he kind of caught di Grassi and Sette Camara up in that incident as well. Number 14, moving up 1 position from last race, is Lucas di Grassi. So gets that really good points finish. The first race in London, of course, he benefited massively from all the carnage and chaos, and there was quite a few drivers who drove for kind of more lower end teams that got points finishes. That being said, you have to keep it between the walls, I guess, in Formula E, and that's what he did. But still, I feel it was mostly a luck-based result, but still good nonetheless, so I've moved him up 1 position. Number 14, moving up 1 position, is Edo Mortara. So this is probably one of the first weekends this year where Mortara tires actually looked better than his teammate Max Gunther. Got good haul points that first race, but same qualifier as Degrassi, and second race finished just outside the points. But that being said, did beat his teammate in both races. Number 12, Antonio Felix da Costa. It's a tricky one, right? His first race gets second place, but then gets given a 3-minute time penalty and finishes last on the road. It seems like it was entirely out of his control. And that being said, benefited a lot from the chaos around him. Second race, didn't have a great race, finished well behind his teammate Verline. But that being said, I've decided to move him up one position. Number 11, moving down 4 positions, is Pascal Verline. So for Verline, his title challenge basically evaporated the last 3 to 4 races, and it's kind of really he's really looked out of it, especially compared to another driver driving a Porsche power car in Dennis. And for Verline, I think first race he got a little bit unlucky. He got taken out by Rast when he was in a pretty good position. Second race he kind of struggled to a points finish, but still compared to the drivers I have in the top 10, I feel like recently Verline hasn't been doing particularly well. He's been basically average. Now number 10, moving down 5 positions, a driver who definitely had a weekend to forget in London is Jean-Eric Vergne. Retired from the first race. I'm not sure exactly what happened that first race. Basically came in the pits and retired. Second race was kind of shuffled out wide by a pretty bold move by Lucas Degrassi, then lost a couple positions and then came into the pits to retire. It seemed like it might have been a puncture or maybe some other issue, and then came in and retired. And then, no, he didn't retire in the second race, but finished last on the road. So really a weekend to forget for Vergne, and he's going to be really hoping that DS and Penske bring a much better car and that he's able to challenge for the Formula E title next year. Number 9, let's see, moving up 1 position is his teammate, Stoffel Vandoorne. So for Vandoorne, first race made that really clumsy move, took out Edo Mortara, but second race I thought was really good, finished 5th. So as a result, I've moved him up 1 position. I know the result, that move was seemed quite ambitious, quite late. Somehow there was no penalty for it, but still the second race was much better, so I've moved him up 1 position. Number 8, let's see, a really excellent result for this driver, moving up 3 positions, is Nico Müller. So for Müller, gets a double points finish in the apt, and he even qualified in the duels, the second race while it was wet, showing that for whatever reason the apps are really good in qualifying in the rain, as we saw earlier in the season in Berlin. So for as his reward, he moved up 3 spots on my power rankings. Number 7, dropping 4 positions, a driver who had a pretty disappointing weekend, is Max Gunther. So for Gunther, goes beaten and out-qualified by his teammate Edo Mortara in both races, despite the fact that Mortara was basically spun by Stoffel Vandoorne in that first race. Still finished behind him on the road. So a bit of a tricky weekend in Gunther, in London for Gunther. But that being said, I think he's had a very good season, and I think even though it seems he doesn't have a contract with Maserati next year, I will be very surprised if he's not on next year's grid. Number 6, moving up 6 positions. Very good weekend for this driver, I thought, and that is Norman Nato. So for Nato, first race got caught up at the end with that incident with Buemi. Thought it was really a 50-50. Didn't really think either driver was predominantly to blame, but was still given a penalty. But I believe he stayed in the points. Second race though was very good. Qualified 3rd, dropped a position to 4th, but still a very good result for him in the Nissan. And he moved up into 10th in the Drivers' Championship. Now on to the top 5, a driver who I think had a really good result in London. Even though the first race didn't go their way, I think the second race, they definitely got the points that they wanted that first time around. And that, of course, is Dan Ticktum. So for Dan Ticktum, a bit controversial maybe having him in the top 5, but I think he was excellent this past weekend in London. Unfortunately got some front wing damage, which kind of ruined his first race. That being said, still finished in the points. Second race got a really hard-earned 9th place finish, so a really excellent result for him. and he'll be really happy that he somehow got Neo into 9th place in the team's championship. Number 4, driver who had a lot of things happen to them this weekend, and that is Sebastian Buemi. He was outright borderline distraught after the contact with Cassidy. I don't really blame him. I feel like it was more of a team miscommunication thing than anything, which is very, very different compared to the Evans and Bird crashes from earlier in the season. Was a bit closer to his teammate Cassidy, still behind, but still nonetheless had 2 pretty good results. Finally got his first podium of the season. I think he was definitely long overdue, deserved that podium in India, of course. And second race, made that good move on Bird and helped Envision steal the team's championship. Number 3, moving down 2 positions actually, which is kind of odd on a weekend where he won the World Championship, is Jake Dennis. So for Dennis, I really think he didn't really have the speed compared to the Jaguar powered cars, but still a very good result for him, a second and a 3rd place. The first race in London, I did think he got a little bit lucky with how everything played out, with drivers basically around him getting taken out, crashing out, taking other drivers out. For him to end up on that podium, made quite a few mistakes with the attack mode that first race, but still excellent at finish to the season. 11 podiums in 16 races is definitely something not to be scoffed at. Excellent, really excellent season for Jake Dennis. Number 2, moving up 2 positions, is Mitch Evans. So first and a second in Rome, or not in Rome, I don't know why I keep saying Rome. So first and a second in London, very excellent result. Of course, got pole that first race as well, but then had to serve that grid penalty and came back through the field to win. In the second race, him and Cassidy, the driver, who of course I haven't mentioned yet, basically were much faster than everyone and finished about 11 seconds up the road from Dennis in 3rd place. So excellent finish to the season for Evans. Of course, number 1, what could have been? So, I mean, for Nick Cassidy, if that crash in Rome with Evans doesn't happen, if he doesn't lose his front wing, we could very well be talking about Nick Cassidy as Formula E World Champion. But that being said, 2 incidents pretty much entirely out of his control, and 1 race in the last 3 basically that he doesn't have something happen. He wins and absolutely dominates. Pole to flag win, and a really excellent end to the season. Of course, next year it's heavily rumored he'll be moving over to the Jaguar Works team to partner with Evans. So that'll be very interesting. 2 Kiwis in the same team. Arguably 2 of the 3 or 4 strongest drivers in Formula E at the moment as well. So that's all for my power ranking after the London ePrix. Final power rankings of season 9. I really enjoyed doing them. I know they didn't get a ton of views, but that being said, I think I still enjoyed it, so I don't really mind too much. And of course, I'll be back again. I think I'll be doing a series looking at kind of doing a season review of the Formula E drivers so far this year. Kind of looking forward to doing that. And of course, there won't be a whole lot of other information through the off season. That being said, I'm really looking forward to season 10 and seeing what it brings. Thank you so much for watching.